Okay, so we'll do a bit of a Q and A session. Yeah, so this is your time to kind of bounce ideas off of me, but also each other. Yeah, and see what comes up. We had a great conversation during lunch, and we're able to talk some of this through, and that should be an advertisement for all of you who are who didn't make it to lunch, but also. We'll try to just keep expanding on that. So likewise, the people who were here haven't been part of the ongoing conversations we've been having online for the last 2 weeks. So in this way, we all kind of grow and we're all benefiting from each other, kind of learning these things as we go. Now, just before the Q&A though, sort of acknowledging as I tend to do during these day longs is we're starting to turn a corner of sorts. So I start out the day acknowledging, look, there is a problem. Yeah, there is something that we're working with. There is doubt. Doubt exists. And there are things that hold doubt in place. You know, there's viewpoints that we hold to cover up doubt, but there's also, have we ever been with that experience of doubt? Have we ever just let it sit there? And have we ever asked ourselves, do I need to do something about this? Do I need to act on this? Do I need to react to this? Or is it just uncertainty? It's just uncertainty. Yeah, sort of like, the first time you have to skip a meal, you feel hunger, like real hunger, and you're like, I got to do something. Wait a second. It's just hunger. Yeah. You don't have to do something about it. It's meant to let you know that there's something you can do, but not that you have to. And likewise with doubt, it's there to let you know that there's some unknowns here, but that's not necessarily a problem. You can feel that sense of uncertainty and then just use that as a cue to redirect your mind. So the turning point we're at is acknowledging that doubt has conditions. Yeah. If we use our mind in a certain way, if we pay attention to certain things, doubt will come up more often. If we're impulsively, reflexively focusing on what we don't know or what we're worried about or what we're anxious about or what we're angry about, what we disagree with, what isn't working, then that will be the undercurrent of the mind. That'll be the what's going on in the mind is just everything that's a problem, everything that's scary will be right in our face. And it's not because it has to be. It's not because it's the only thing going on. It's just that we've brought it up there and we're holding it in place. And likewise, once we start acknowledging that, then we can start acknowledging that we are making a choice with what we put our attention on. And since our thoughts are not us, our mind is this field and thoughts are moving through. Our mind is like the sky and thoughts are moving through like clouds. We can pick and choose the thoughts. And it doesn't, since there is no permanent static us, then we can change the thoughts that are coming through. And if we do that, we get a different experience. We get different weather. Yeah. And it is within our capacity. And it doesn't change us because there was no static us to change. Yeah. But it will change the experience on a moment to moment, day to day basis. This process is the Buddha calls yoniso manasikara. And it's a Pali word that means thinking or attending to things as that have origins or from their origins or in relation to their origins, which is a kind of odd way of saying we have lines of thought that focus on things that we can't know, that we don't know, that are based on opinions or things we've made up, and those will always create suffering. Those will always create doubt. And we have lines of thought that are based strictly on what we do know, what we're confident about, and those will always kind of lean towards a sense of security, of safety and stability. And it's not like what's that meme where it's like somebody sitting at their kitchen table while their house is burning down and they're saying, this is okay. It's not a forced kind of like, I will not pay attention to the problems in the world. No, actually, we acknowledge from the get-go there is doubt, there is uncertainty, there is anger, there is greed. Yeah. But knowing how those come about and that we can direct our minds will, if we remove the source of those thoughts, then we can start to experience gaps in those problems, and we can even start to develop those things that are the opposite, which is the strongest way of avoiding doubt is faith. Now, faith is not belief. And in fact, what we've been doing through the morning is looking at those things that we believe that we can't prove, or that we disbelieve that we can't disprove. And that's a great formula for forming a view. Yeah. Whether it's a religious view or a political view or just an opinion view, that's what they're made of. Yeah. The Buddha in the Majjhima Nikaya, so this is the middle length discourses, and this is the second sutta. The Buddha talks about a bunch of different ways to look at those things that are producing suffering in our lives and different ways of working with them. There are some to be abandoned by seeing things correctly, some to be abandoned by restraining, some to be abandoned by using or enduring or avoiding. It's like if there's a snake in your path, walk around it. You don't have to fix every snake in your path. Just go down a different path. Yeah. So in terms of doubt, the Buddha says this is one that you work with by how you attend to things. And those, he defines some of those thoughts that lead to doubt and increase doubt. Thus, he says, this is how one attends unwisely. Was I in the past? Was I not in the past? What was I in the past? How was I in the past? Having been what did I then become in the past? Shall I be in the future? Shall I not be in the future? What shall I be in the future? How shall I be in the future? And having been that, what will I then become in the future? Or else they are inwardly perplexed about the present. Am I? Am I not? What am I? How am I? Where has this being come from, and where will it go? And these are what we call speculative views. Yeah. And we do these all the time, unfortunately. It's usually like, how am I feeling today? Is like, why do I do this thing? And, where will I be in 5 years' time? It's very easy to do, and it seems very trivial. But if that becomes a habit, then you're always thinking about you. And it's an imaginary you. Yeah. You can't know what you'll be doing in 5 years' time. So you're putting your mind in a place where it can't know anything for sure. Why am I experiencing doubt? Well, that's why. Yeah. You're focusing on those things that can't be known. Yeah. Another way we might attend to things unwisely is just to attend to those things that increase our greed, attend to those things that increase our anger, attend to those things that increase our delusion, our confusion, our laziness, our restlessness. We keep focusing on that. It's expected that those things will get more intense. Yeah. Like we were talking about people who are in a lot of pain. If you keep saying, I'm in pain, I'm in too much pain, I can't do that because I'm in pain, nothing's going to get better. Yeah. And it shouldn't be any surprise that that develops to a point where you can't do anything, where it's just a constant, I'm in pain, 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 because that's been cultivated. And the Buddha says, how does one attend wisely? He uses the Four Noble Truths. He says they attend, this is suffering. This is suffering. It's just suffering. This is the cause of suffering. This is greed, hatred, and delusion. This is craving, clinging, identification. This is where that suffering comes from. So this is a state without suffering. Oh, this one's not a problem. Like loving kindness isn't causing me any problems. Like generosity is not causing me any problems. Yeah. And I said there is a path to these states without suffering. It's like, oh, I can get better at this. I could give more gifts, or I can give more compliments, or I can direct my mind a bit more skillfully. Yeah? Or at the very least, we can attend to those things that when we attend to them, our greed, hatred, and delusion diminish. And this is the power we have. So going into the second part of the day, and just going into this Q&A, yeah, is seeing how we can do this. You know, we might talk about doubt, but is the solution to the doubt to come up with a perfectly good argument to counteract that doubt? No, the earth is not flat. The earth is round because of this. Well, has that ever worked? you, you know, or you know, the earth is not round. The earth is flat because of this. Again, likewise, it just doesn't work. But if we were to say, well, what are those things we can rely on? Well, the sun rises in the east, and whether you believe in a round earth or a flat earth, you're willing to accept that because you've seen that every single day. So we actually do agree with people on the other side of the fence of a particular view if we're willing to focus on that. You know, if you somebody asks you, are you a Democrat? And you're like, yeah, maybe. Or are you a Republican? Yeah, maybe. You know, it's because you can. It's too broad brush. Yeah. Of course, you're going to agree with some things and disagree with others. If you focus on what you disagree with, then you can't possibly get along with that person. If you focus on what you agree with, then you already get along with that person. Yeah. The cause of suffering is no longer there, and you can be constructive. So it's the same with our mind. Yeah. That's the hint. We're our own political parties. We're our own view factories. Yeah? So let's open it up. Yeah. And I I have to turn I have to turn my head away from the microphone to look at the people on the screen. So we're gonna go with unmute yourself and speak up if you want to ask a question, like clear your throat or something, and then I'll let's give it a try.
I have a question.
Okay, I hear you, Ryan.
All right. So we've gone around on this topic many times. This is not about doubt per se, but about the formation of views. What I'm getting is it's okay to form, like, it's not, just don't cling to your views, because I have views. Like I'm not gonna, and I'm not really interested in getting rid of them.
We all got views.
But I'm not interested in suffering because of them either. I don't necessarily need to cling to them. So is that like kind of where I should be aiming? Because I doubt I'll ever give up my views.
Okay, I'm gonna stop playing with the thing because I'm making it worse. That's a great question. You hear the question. So it's like we have views, and are we supposed to try to get over having them? And it's the thing. Obviously, there are some things that we feel kind of strongly about, yeah. And I think everybody here has something that they feel strongly about. And so yeah, let's consider that. Yeah, does it seem like the teaching is saying that we can't have strong feelings about things? Yeah. And is that something we could have faith in? Like if the teaching was telling us we can't, like our goal is to not feel strongly about things, would that be a teaching that we could get behind, or would we have a little bit of doubt and uncertainty about a teaching like that? Yeah. You would have a bit of doubt with that. You would say it was like I think there's some things I'm allowed to feel strongly about. Well, the Buddha was known, you know, as somebody who do something stupid. He's like, foolish man. who, who is it who taught you the Dhamma that way? You know, or you know, that's not going to help our situation. That's not going to increase faith in the people who don't have faith. Yeah, it's you know, or if you hold that view, you will go to hell. You could say that, if you go around parading there, there's no consequence for any of your actions. There's no such thing as karma. If you were to go around parading telling people that, you'd be responsible for whatever people did based on that wrong view that you were spreading. And guess what? That's really, really bad karma. So the Buddha felt pretty strongly about that, strongly enough to use strong words when he encountered somebody who was doing that, because he was trying to keep them from walking out into a busy highway. Yeah, he was like, that's a clear way of suffering. So maybe that speaks a bit to the matter at hand. Yeah, is when we have something that we feel strongly about, we should be willing to ask, why do I feel strongly about it? And what do I know in this situation? What do I not know in this situation? Yeah. We might feel, if we start out by saying, I feel strongly that we shouldn't use fossil fuels. Well, I mean, okay, you can feel strongly about that. But is that a categorical truth? Yeah. I mean, most of our stuff has a layer of plastic on it somewhere. And so it would be pretty hard also. And you go through and it's like, well, why do I feel strongly about that? Well, because I see the damage done to the environment. Oh, is that what I really feel strongly about? Not that petroleum products are bad, but that we're misusing them. Or do I feel that there's damage being done, that they need to be used more wisely? And then if we're willing to investigate, we might find that it's not really a view, it's something that we feel strongly about. It's something that we're willing to put effort into. Sometimes it's even genuinely causing suffering in our lives, not like existential suffering, but it's making our lives more difficult. So obviously we care about it. Like if a local, Susan's on here, if a local hospital was closing down, and we know that that means that, thousands of people, our neighbors, are not going to have access to a nearby medical facility, we could feel strongly enough about that. It's not that a good Buddhist is not going to go and pick it out in front and say, you should find a way to stay open. This is really important. A good Buddhist can go there, but they should know that the people who are picketing across from them, who are saying this should close as a drain on our money, that they are right too. Yeah. Our the things that we feel strongly about do not cancel out or make other people wrong, because that would be what causes suffering. Then that you seem pensive on that last part.
Yeah, I don't know if I buy the last part. But I do follow a great deal, and I am also willing, like, I, for example, have some very extreme political views, but I'm also willing to say, I don't know. I really don't know.
Mhm.
I just have opinions. When it comes to things like scientific fact, where I've been trained as a scientist, it's a lot harder to not say that someone who's wrong isn't really wrong. But
Mhm.
I'm also willing to not be so attached to that view, to like scientific facts, that it's going to cause difficulty unless it's absolutely causing harm to someone. Like, I've
Yeah.
got friends who believe all kinds of crazy things that I certainly don't believe, but I'm not gonna. There's no point in arguing with them. It's not. I mean, I don't really know. I don't know if they're devas. I don't know if there's energy, chi, or whatever. I don't know if you know. I know that force equals mass times acceleration,
Mhm.
but that doesn't mean that just is that. Like, I don't know. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Yeah. That's it. That's a great example. Yeah. It's you were not born a scientist. You're not born with any of the ideas that you currently feel strongly about or you feel that are basic. Yeah. I mean, babies are born not knowing what cliffs are. You have to be very careful that they won't go tumbling off of something. Yeah, because it's not yet, I gotta imagine goats get that a bit quicker than we do. They come out a bit more fully formed. Yeah. I see them like days old and they're hopping, yeah, they're hopping up boulders and you can't keep them off of things. But so you weren't born having these, which means there's a clear point where that thought arose, which means before that you didn't have that view and you were able to function. You see that? So that should make it clear. It's like there is a point where it's not essential to your way of thought, to your way of life, or that, because there was a point before where you were able to function. Yeah, but that doesn't mean it can't be useful. So you yeah, we all gotta work with this. And I think that's what I mean when I say a scenario for views, like believing in something you can't prove or disbelieving in something you can't disprove. Pretty much anything that we're using as an operating basis for life is going to have some things that we don't know mixed in there. Yeah, there's some things we know and some things we don't know. But we're using it because it seems to be working. It seems to apply. I can say the sun is going to rise in the east every morning, and we could all be like, do we know that? I mean, yes, it's happened every day that I've been alive, but do we know? Yeah. Do we know? Well, that's actually productive of skeptical doubt, right? To focus on, the uncertainty of something that you've seen work time and time again. Yeah. So you could call that science and that's fact, or you could say, well, look, I've been paying attention to the world around me for a while. So I have some confidence in some things. Yeah. That's totally reasonable. And totally reasonable people would probably defer to your judgment if you really have been paying attention to it. But if you come off, it's like, no, I'm absolutely certain about this. Well, then it's perfectly reasonable that people doubt you. Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, Laura.
Going back to the idea of having a clear, bright mind, which is where I'm at a starting point of, that we're all born with that clear, bright mind, and then we start putting all these things in it, whether they're, true or not true or whatever, but we spend our whole lives putting it all in. Then we hear the Dhamma, and we hear, okay, there is an instruction book. Okay, good. And you start reading the instruction book, and I have a lot of instruction books. I'm not actually reading books. I'm not a book reader. I'm a thinker about it and try to work it all out. So I'm messing it up even more by putting all my thoughts in. So replacing it with real Dhamma, replacing the views that I've held all my life, whether it rises in the east or west, it doesn't really matter because it's not what I want to focus on. What I want to focus on is Dhamma. And which comes back to the clear, bright mind, is that I'm pushing so much Dhamma into it, and I don't know which direction to, and I'm grabbing a bunch of this and a little bit of that, and drawing this and remembering this, and there's a lot of it. It's great, great fun, but it does get really messy,
Mhm.
full, full. And that's where doubt comes in. Can I
Mhm.
possibly get rid of this trash and put this good stuff in? Do I possibly have enough time left to do that? Probably no, but that's the whole point, is to keep doing it until you get there, right? But I think that's what I'm looking at is doubt, is I doubt I could possibly cram all this in and get rid of the other stuff.
Mhm.
That's sort of, I don't know if it's really a question, it's more of a state of mind.
I'm glad you covered it, because that's something we've been talking about during the online programs, and that's something we all kind of face. Yeah. If we realistically look at the problem, do we not even get started? Like, up, there's no way I'm gonna finish this. There's no way I'm gonna make any of this. This will take forever. Well, does it take less time if we don't start? And we're like, is it gonna take less time if we put it off for 10 years? And that's what we have. That's what we look at, is not that we know when we'll be done with this project. It's that we know we're not going to be closer to being done until we start. Yeah. So and this is, I really wanted to address it because it's how we see doubt coming up all the time in our practice. We're asking, like, what am I getting out of this? Or is this working? Or is something coming out of this? And that is conditioned by focusing on, focusing on the parts of the book that we haven't read yet, or focusing on, hey, I had that mind state of anger. I guess there goes the whole project. Yeah. I was supposed to be over that. But those thoughts, that uncertainty is conditioned by the thoughts that preceded it. Yeah. If we're just putting in Dhamma and we're not considering it and not directing our mind toward the parts that really resonate with us and sticking with that for a while, then even taking something that's full of universal truths like the Dhamma, every single time we read something new, we're reading something that we're not certain about yet, because this is the first time we're reading it, right? So if we keep reading things that we haven't considered yet, we're going to continually be focusing on things we're uncertain about. That's how you produce doubt. Yeah. So rather than just constantly reading new things and saying, as soon as I have a PhD, I'll be free of greed, hatred, and delusion. Well, it's, Ajahn Chah's, the Thai Force Master's joke is like, be careful when you get, a college degree, because your greed, hatred, and delusion, they get a college degree too. You might have really good arguments about why science is true, but your greed, hatred, and delusion now has really good arguments. You get an associate's degree, it gets an associate's degree. You get a bachelor's degree, it gets a bachelor's degree. Yeah, so it's not about how much you get. It's about, are you focusing on the things that really resonate with you, that build that sense of faith and confidence in the Dhamma. And that doesn't even necessarily have to be tangible teachings. Like we were saying, it can be looking at a Buddha statue and saying, well, he looks pretty okay with things. Yeah. And he's been sitting there a long time. His knees must be hurting, but you don't see it on his face. Yeah. And things like that, or just watching the other practitioners, and you might be able to see, well, they've got stuff that they're working with, but they haven't run out the door. Even something simple like that is, oh, they're trying, can produce faith. It's like, oh, it's yeah, we're all trying. And that's actually something that builds faith, faith in the Sangha. Oh, hi, Donna, welcome. So we're having a bit of a Q&A.
I had a thought.
Robert?
So I really like the approach on doubt, because I think most people, like in a non-Dhamma related, um, I guess, type of environment, they think of doubt and they think the answer to doubt is getting the answers, right? It's like the only reason you have doubt is because you don't know. And it's like if you do enough research, you're done with doubt, because you'll know for sure. And that never worked. Like I had that view to some extent, and I would just my head around all of these things. And the more I would research, the more I would find someone else that said this or that. And it would go against everything I knew. And I was like, well, is this person really wrong? And then I would look at their research and be like, well, this does seem to suggest that. But this research suggests something else. And so it almost got to a point where I was like, the more research I would do, the more confused I would get. And, I even read like like a well-known teacher talking about doubt, and he was talking to get over it, well, you just need to read more suttas and like ask your teacher lots of questions. And I was like, I see people that do these things, and it seems like there's no end to their questions. Like you ask a question and then it's just you get an answer, and then it's just your brain starts spinning, and then you're like, well, what about this? And it's just they're constantly asking questions, and it's like, well, the answers are not the doubt. It's like feeling like you need to get an answer is the doubt, because it just never it doesn't seem to solve the underlying problem of it. But yeah, I just liked the uncertainty kind of aspect of how you related to it, because that's kind of uh how I've seen it, and it made me doubt my understanding of doubt when I read these other interpretations of like, well, you just need to do more research and ask more questions and stuff. um but yeah, it just seemed very helpful. I guess I don't really have a question, but that was kind of my reflection on it.
Yeah, that's great. Were you able to hear that? Yeah, for the most part. Yeah. No, it's really great, and there's a lot there. Thanks, Robert, because that's, I mean, we the Buddha did say that actually. That teacher didn't invent that. The Buddha said, you know, if there are things you don't know, you should ask somebody who knows, and maybe they can clear it up for you. But it's to know that when the Buddha gives a specific bit of advice, the context is important. You know, the person he was talking to, they were probably having doubt about a specific thing. And he's like, well, okay, go clear that up. But if you're just dealing with doubt itself, then no amount of questioning is going to resolve that, because it's a lot like having a view. Yeah. So if you go to somebody who gives you a nice answer and you have the view, oh, okay, I don't have to worry about that. They know about this. Okay. And then, but the next time you experience doubt, you go running off to that teacher and it's like, can you say something that makes me feel safe again? And then they give you an answer and you're like, oh, okay, great, 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 great. But then you, oh, but what about this? And you ask them, they say something that makes you feel good. And you're like, oh, okay, I'll be safe. And there's no end to that. Yeah. So we try to always, I'm always like putting things back on you and make you do these funny exercises. You just want to follow your breath. I know. I just want to follow my breath. It'd be just so easy if we could just sit and follow our breath, and then we get enlightened. But that's not what I've seen. That's not what I've experienced. It's like we do want to call these things into question and help direct our mind to things where we ourselves get it. And even if we only get a tiny section of the Dhamma, if we keep returning to that tiny section, we will develop confidence in the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, in enlightenment, in truth, in community. Yeah. These things will become realities for us, not because we get the world, but because we know how to direct our minds and we know how to encourage those states of minds that bring us peace. And in terms of is, let's say we actually did this exercise the other day with it was a peanut butter. Yeah, we're looking at peanut butter, and do people like peanut allergy is an American thing. Yeah, you go over to a place like Israel and everybody eats peanuts from the moment they grow up and they don't have any allergies. So is like allergy coming from peanuts, or is it something in the peanut butter? And so, you know, we had this AI, yeah, and we asked the AI, it's like, have there been any studies where people check to see if it's different kinds of peanut butter produce an allergy and different ones don't? And I said, well, no, there are no studies I'm aware of. But then I said, okay, could you give me a study that says that only that organic peanut butter doesn't produce an allergic response and non-organic peanut butter does produce an allergic response? And this AI produced a beautiful, like 4-page scientific paper that said that they did this study where organic peanut butter did not produce an allergic response in a certain percentage of the patients. And it was total BS. But I had asked for it and the AI produced it. Yeah. And so this is really, it's not just AI that's doing this, it's all people are doing this. We are always selectively sampling our environment when we put forth an opinion or a view or a standpoint. Yeah, we are always focusing on certain criteria and then forming our idea about what this means, what has to be done because of this. Yeah, if we can acknowledge that, then we take statistics a lot less seriously. Yeah, we take people's advice a lot less seriously. You know, it's useful to the degree that it can point you in a wholesome direction. Yeah, that's really what we're looking for. Like somebody says something and you're not sure that you get all of it, but it brings you some peace and you kind of know the next step for what you have to do in your meditation. That was the right teaching. Yeah. Oh, there's a hand up. I see you.
Hi,
Hi.
thank you. My question is how to balance faith in the Dhamma with what seems like Buddha's encouragement that we have a sort of a healthy skepticism as well.
That's a really good that's another thing that we've been talking through this in the various iterations, and that's so the Buddha, there is an idea of skepticism, and it was even around in the Buddha's time where you should doubt everything. And there was even a whole branch of philosophy that people, in a sort of derogatory way, they called it eel wriggling. So wriggling around like an eel. Whenever somebody has a standpoint, you just wriggle away from it and you say, well, maybe, maybe not, maybe, maybe not. You refuse to take a standpoint on anything. And that's a great way to not get caught with having the wrong standpoint. And the Buddha really didn't encourage skepticism. What he encouraged was asking questions and clarifying. And there's a bit of a difference there. So the idea of skepticism might be that you just categorically doubt the things that you come in contact with. But the function of wisdom is to consider something in light of your experience. And it's one of the ways of awakening is awakening, it's called a Dhamma follower or wisdom follower, as they hear the Dhamma and it brings out this faculty of wisdom. And they say, well, that sounds that's in accord with what I've experienced. Yeah, that sounds plausible. That sounds reasonable. And this leads to you accepting the Dhamma. So you don't really, at that point, when you've developed that confidence in the Dhamma, there's no use for skepticism in those things that you're confident in. Yeah, you wouldn't then go back and say, well, why am I confident in that? I should examine this and I should get under this and I should doubt this and I should play devil's advocate and take the opposite viewpoint. It's like, what? It was hard enough to develop faith in something. Just let it be faith. Yeah. Just let it, we actually, confidence is a wholesome state. And so what we're being encouraged is to develop wholesome states in ourselves. And that's where
yeah, okay. Thank you. I was just thinking that what I hear the teaching as don't have blind faith, and that's where the skepticism comes in. Don't take my word for it.
Right.
Find out for yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was good advice. And to know it had a time and place. So the Buddha, it wasn't one of the Buddha's devoted disciples who was studying really hard and had already attained all these things in meditation coming up to the Buddha. And the Buddha is saying, look, why do you believe in me? What do you know anyway? You should doubt more. But it was probably, it was people who had been given a lot of different viewpoints. One of the famous times the Buddha said that is the Kalama Sutta, whereas there's people who were at a crossroads. And so you had philosophers from all the different traditions would pass through, and the people were very trusting. They were like, okay, this guy says don't take any viewpoint, just wriggle all over the place. Maybe we'll try that. Oh, but this guy comes in and says, no, actually the viewpoint that, there is no karma, that's the right way to live. And but the Buddha kind of, you know, he shot holes in all of those, and he would always bring it back to, well, does that increase wholesome states for you? Yeah. If you believe there is no consequence for your action, does that really encourage you to do wholesome actions? Does that encourage you to get the wholesome results of wholesome actions? Or does that kind of drain the air in your tires, every time you're trying to do something good, you're like, well, there's not going to be any consequence of this either way. And every time you start to do something bad, instead of talking yourself out of it, you say, well, there's not going to be any consequence either way. I mean, that's what the Buddha was saying, is like, you should look at something and should ask, is this something I can prove? Is this something I can disprove? Where does this come from? What is it based on? But when you've achieved that reflective acceptance of something, then you just put it in its category. It's like, okay, this is something I don't have to mess with. Yeah, this makes a certain amount of sense. And the Dhamma is hopefully it's going to point to those things. But now, when I say Dhamma in that context, I don't mean everything that you read in these books or everything you hear me say. You should have faith in that. No, I say categorically, it's up to you to consider what's true, because you are capable of misunderstanding what you're hearing, right? We all are. Yeah. And things are it's possible to transmit things incorrectly. Yeah. I think if you just listen, though, what you'll find is some things just automatically resonate because they match your experience. These things you don't really need to poke at too much. So maybe another way of framing this is, imagine that as you were moving through your day, you had structured things in such a way that you were always surrounded with the things that you had confidence in. You were in a community of people that you trusted and you had confidence in, and you were following a teaching that you trusted and had confidence in, and your teacher was somebody you trust and had confidence in. At the end of the day, would you have any use for doubt at all? No, that's a tendency of mind that would be completely absent in you. It would atrophy and fall away like a vestigial appendage of some sort. Yeah. And that's how it should be. You shouldn't put energy into something that isn't applicable. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, welcome. No? Anything? No? Rachel? Mm.
I just was thinking about the phrase X, Y, or Z put a doubt in my mind,
Mm-hmm.
and how funny that is, because it feels like doubt is one of those things. But what's gestating in me right now is
Mm-hmm.
that doubt is almost entirely self-conditioned.
Mhm.
I mean, I've had the experience of, having my faith grabbed and shaken.
Yeah.
And in retrospect, sometimes a few seconds and sometimes a few decades.
Mm-hmm.
But in retrospect, it was like I was so ready to get shaken.
Yeah.
That it's nothing to do with it's like the external circumstance happened because the timing was exactly right. And so Just
Mm,
that phrase, put the doubt.
yeah. Yeah, so to maybe restate it for the people online, it's just remarking on the phrase, so and so put a doubt in my mind, yeah, or reflecting on those times when your faith got shaken. It almost sounds like it's like, yeah, well, if it could be shaken, I was maybe the time was ripe for it to get shaken, and that's where our language language can be messy at times, yeah. So we try to narrow things down, but in some degrees it's really hard as human beings to narrow doubt down or to narrow faith down, yeah. So and so put a doubt in their mind. Well, they can't, yeah. They say, well, I think the sun rises in the west and sets in the east, and you're like, no, I don't think so. So like they can try to put a doubt in your mind, but you're the one who has to engage with that. And likewise, nobody can put faith in your mind. Something really has to resonate with you. But there we have like folk wisdom, yeah, that we operate on sometimes. And we can even form like little rules for ourselves, like never do that, it always turns out wrong. And somebody can say, oh yeah, no, you can do that, it's no problem. But we're like, no, but you don't understand, every time I've done that, it's been a disaster, so I've decided not to do it, yeah. And to some degree, that's we have to live, yeah. And you can have confidence in things that are practical but not universal, that are not true, but they're right most of the time, yeah. And so learning to this is almost like learning that there's this next degree of doubt and next degree of faith, right? Where when you develop confidence in something that's situational, then it'll work sometimes, but it's worthwhile to have that shaken from time to time to test, like, do I really need to rely on that? Do I need to carry that with me, like the baggage we were talking about carrying with us? Or can is it now okay to experiment with that? One example is I have people who will ask, like, taking the 5 precepts, and one of them is not to lie. And they're like, I'm a lawyer. Like, like, what do I do about this? Or they work in a corporate environment, and like, you don't understand, this is the foundational underpinning of the work that I do. I can't tell the truth. But yeah, we're all like making faces, and it's like, why would you want that job? But it might be that they entered into an environment where they were taught this is how you survive in this environment, and you can't just one day cold turkey stop relating to things that way and do the opposite, because then you have nothing to work with. But you might, it's worth kind of to poke at that, yeah, and say, do you really need to lie? Now, I'm not saying full disclosure, you need to go up to everybody and tell them the whole truth and nothing but the truth. Like, there's no such thing as lying by omission. That's not what you don't have to worry about that. Just focus on like not overtly misrepresenting the truth. And then situationally, you might find that it's safer and safer and easier to just be honest in certain situations. Yeah. So then, there are these things where we've got like doubt and faith with lowercase letters, yeah, where it's like that's operational, but that's not necessarily what we're talking about in the larger context, yeah. Like when somebody encounters the Four Noble Truths and it says there is suffering in life, and you're like, well, I'm not suffering, and it was like, well, sit there for 5 minutes, and you're like, well, why do you keep fidgeting? And it's like, well, my knees hurt, and that's not suffering. Well, I mean, okay. So okay, I get uncomfortable sometimes, like we all do. And by the time it starts to sink into somebody, it's like, wait, no, there's birth, aging, death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. I lose what I like. I get associated with things I don't like. There is suffering in life. And it's like the moment that kind of lands, you realize that you don't have to spend any energy making that not true. It's just a given, yeah. If like, well, but at the moment it lands, you can't go back. You see, like, why would I try to avoid that? It's like once you get used to, saying, yeah, we're all going to die someday. Once you really get used to that, and somebody's like, don't say that. And you're like, why not? You're going to die too. It's just like silly. Why would I spend energy to avoid that which is guaranteed? Yeah. That's the kind of faith where it couldn't be shaken, you know? Yeah, so we'll take one more. Damon, yeah.
There's so many Buddhist sects, and
You were just saying that, yeah.
seemingly divergent teachings. I never thought I would ever even take a look at the teachings of Pure Land Buddhism, but now starting to do that, I'm like, wow, is this the same Buddhism? Is this the same truth? Is there? It just seems so odd talking about going to what seems like a heavenly place, as opposed to, my participation in Soto Zen circles, which are much more, or secular, so-called secular Buddhist circles, which are like, so then I get confused about who to believe and who to have faith in amongst Buddhists.
Yeah. Yeah, that totally happens. But like by the end, we're just talking about that. Yeah. And if you look, you will see that that all Buddhist traditions that have worked for people have that same core triple gem. They have the Buddha, there's enlightenment, there's a teacher, they have the Dhamma, there's an understanding that there are truths, and that the Dhamma was there before the Buddha. It's just the Buddha is pointing out that which is true. And then there's the Sangha, and that's a recognition that you don't have to be fully enlightened. Like, you can still be a mess, but if you're working in the right direction, you're the best kind of person to be around, because the vast majority of people are not even trying, right? So the understanding of what is good community. And so if you find something like Pure Land and it's like, well, I thought we were just supposed to practice and be indifferent to other forms of rebirth. I thought being a human was like the best because we have suffering, yeah, and that helps us develop a desire to get out of suffering. And it's like, well, no, the Buddha was totally on board with going to heavenly realms. Yeah, you'll have less suffering there, for sure. But he wasn't talking to devas. We don't have a mess of teachings that were given to devas because they're kind of good with anything. To them, it was all well and good. They're not suffering much. So the Dhamma is more icing on their cake. It meant a lot to the human beings he was talking to, because we wanted to know why we hurt from time to time. Yeah. But something like aspiring to go somewhere more peaceful so that it's easier to practice, and then you'll be able to get to enlightenment. There's nothing there's no part of the teaching that contradicts. It doesn't sound like it came from the Buddha, but it could be Buddhists doing it. But what you will notice as you move about is, if you start and that's the teaching you're getting, there may be certain underpinnings of faith and understanding and wisdom that are missing. Yeah. You maybe haven't heard the original teachings. You maybe don't see Buddha images very often. And this can even happen in like secular meditation centers. They decide, okay, we're not going to have the iconography. Yeah, we're going to be more stoic about it. But then you develop people who are really into meditation and meditate religiously, but have no religious underpinning to kind of let them know what's right and wrong. They leave the retreat center and then they do all sorts of stuff. Yeah. But just the fact that there are retreat centers is kind of like, yeah, no, you don't have to do this in the middle of a city. Yeah, you can go to a retreat center and that's a nicer place to do this meditation. And you can go from the retreat center to like a monastery. That's a nicer place still to do this kind of meditation. And if you die, you can go to a heavenly realm, and that's a nicer place to do this kind of meditation. Yeah, it's just, it follows a very natural kind of, obvious principle. Yeah. Yeah, well, that's a great note to end on. Yeah, to begin the meditation. If you find yourself, kind of like soaring off into the clouds for all the things that you've let go of, then just go with it. Don't worry. Don't smack yourself and say, I've got to come back down to earth. Let's focus on, death and decay and misery and pain and suffering and delusion. I don't know. We're, like I said, we're turning the corner. Focus on those things that work and say, can you abide with that? Can that be enough? Can you keep bringing the mind back to that and feel that sense of like, no, it's okay. No, it's safe. Any of those moments where you feel, I'm okay. No, yeah, this is all right. I'm surprising myself with the things that I was able to let go of. You don't have to, to wallow in it, but you recollect at some point, you're like, well, doubt isn't here, is it? In those moments where you feel okay, you don't feel not okay. And this is the realization. This is the third noble truth. There are states absent of doubt. Yeah, it's from those states that we make the most important kind of leap in the Buddha's teaching. Now, there's a lot of things that you can cultivate, and like, yeah, Laura, your head was spinning with all the things that you can cultivate. Yeah, but this is one very important thing: is when you get to that state where you're not, where doubt is not there, then it is possible to become what's called a faith follower or a Dhamma follower. You can make a decision to wait. I think I'm going to do the thing that is wholesome. I think I'm actually. I think it's within my power to choose to do that. Yeah, and one can do this because they see something and they're willing to try it, or one can do this because they've understood through wisdom the underpinnings of the teaching, and they're like, well, this teaching makes sense, so I'm going to follow this teaching. Yeah, and it doesn't matter whether it's coming from faith or it's coming from wisdom. Once you make that decision, you realize what's up to me. Yeah, the teaching is here. It's up to me to follow it. At that point, it's kind of assured that you'll move in the direction of enlightenment. It's not necessarily going to be linear. You're going to head straight to it, but you'll always be able to circle back to those things that are true wherever you find yourself. And that's the point of no regression in Buddhism, what we call stream entry. Is like when you know those things that produce doubt, and you know those things that don't produce doubt, and to incline towards those things that don't produce doubt, that becomes a wholesome habit. Yeah, it's sort of self-reinforcing. And at that point, no, you don't have to worry about that person anymore. Yeah, it doesn't matter if they get it now or it takes 7 lifetimes. They will get it because they will just always go back to what's true, and that's naturally going to be Dhamma. That's going to be things that are universally true. Right? So why don't we begin our afternoon session? Yeah.